Welcome to Dioramas and Decor by John. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to make this Wasteland outpost. After cutting foam or finding pieces to make a rough shape for my outpost, I want to use a small figure, and in this case, it's a Death Corps trooper to kind of get the scale of what my outpost is going to look like. Then I start marking out some cave entrances. Before I glue all the pieces together, I use a hot wire cutter to cut out my caves. And here we have the beginning of our Wasteland outpost. I used a polyurethane adhesive to glue all of my foam pieces together, and then I used bamboo skewers to hold everything together while it dries. After the glue dries, I use a hot wire cutter to start shaping the outpost again. I used polyurethane glue because when it dries, it turns into a foam and you can cut it easier with the hot wire cutter. I want my outpost to have a sedimentary rock look to it. So to get that, I get a razor and I make horizontal cuts over the surface of the outpost. When I finish making the cuts, I retract the blade and I use the handle of my razor and drag it vertically over my horizontal cuts, and I get foam to start chipping off. This is going to make a really nice texture once the paint gets on it. You can see here the texture is really starting to come out really nice. And you can also see that this is very messy. And this little mess that I have here is after I already cleaned up my station like 3 times. I mixed up some gray paint with plaster and I painted the outside surface. Looking pretty good. This outpost is going to have a ramshackle look to it because it's been built upon and modified over hundreds of years. I'm a big fan of Eric's Hobby Workshop. He's a YouTuber and I've learned a lot from him about making terrain. And he says that if you want to make a good ramshackle layout, don't plan it. I'm going to put a link to Eric's Hobby Workshop in the description below. I highly recommend you watch it. He's got great projects, great history and lore of Necromunda, and he is just funny. I got these polystyrene stairs through Amazon, and they're really good for this kind of terrain. The outpost has 2 peaks, so I wanted to create a catwalk so that lookouts could go from one side of the outpost to the other without having to go up and down the ledge faces. To make the catwalk, I used 2 pieces of chipboard and hot glued a piece of sculptor's mesh in between. Now that the catwalk's in place, I took my miniature and I tried putting them in different positions on the outpost just to make sure that they sat nicely. And you can see on these final 2 spots, the miniature kind of fell over a little bit. So what I did is I took a razor blade and I just kind of made the area a little bigger so that the miniatures wouldn't fall over or be as difficult to stand up in these areas. If you have enjoyed this video so far and would like to see more content like this, please like, share, and subscribe. I like to go to the Goodwill and other like dollar stores and stuff to see if I can find toys or just different pieces of stuff that I can use for my projects. And in this instance, I found a laser crossbow from Star Wars, and the sight on it looked like it would be a nice piece of machinery. So I purchased it for a whole $3, and I'm going to put it on the side of my outpost and make it into some kind of like power generation room or something like that. Because when I look at this outpost, I think of it as being like a mine or something like that that is now being repurposed. So I hot glue the piece of machinery to the side of the mountain, and then I start to construct a building around it. I use small pieces of corrugated paper and cut up cereal box to kind of give my building that ramshackle, pieced together look. I think the two peaks on this outpost would be a great place to have some observers. So I'm going to construct some blinds to conceal any observers, and then also to provide them a little bit of cover. I felt like what I'm calling the back of the outpost was kind of plain, so I decided to put a door over one of the cave entrances. I felt a few areas still weren't very playable, so I wanted to add a few platforms. To continue with that industrial steampunk type vibe on my building, I wanted to put a pipe going from the ground up into the building, So I decided I would use this toy, and then I never actually filmed myself putting it in. After I finished attaching the pipe, I took the outpost outside and painted all of the metal surfaces with coffee brown, and then I painted some of the stone with a black spray paint. Here I'm using gray paint to cover up any overspray from the coffee brown or black. All the walkways are pretty clean right now, so it's time to start adding some sand and dirt. First I use white glue and kind of get it in the corners, and then I'll use a larger grit sand, put that down, and then I'll use a smaller grit and put that on top of it. After the glue dries, I cover the sand with a gray paint. I dry brush some silver paint over the corrugated paper to kind of give it that metal look. To get a weathered, grimy type look to any of the metal pieces, I made a wash with black paint and some thinner and a little bit of water, and then I just coat all of the areas that have metal on them, so it gets this nice, just dingy look to it. Thank you for watching my video on how I made this Wasteland outpost. I know there's some things you see in the pictures that weren't covered in this video, and they'll be covered in future videos, so please come back and watch again on Dioramas and Decor by John. Thank you.